Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Stream of Consciousness. I'm your host, Cyrus. A lot of people are not aware that Bill Maher is an anti-vaxxer and has been for like over a decade. There's this great article that chronicles all of his misdeeds, spreading misinformation on this subject. In fact, he's given a lot of airtime to known anti-vaxxer and anti-GMO propagandist Robert Kennedy Jr. In case you're not aware, the consensus on GMO safety is firmer than for human-induced climate change. And in fact, like a third of the living Nobel scientists have signed the statement saying that genetically modified foods save lives, they're safe. They say here, how many poor people in the world must die before we consider this a crime against humanity, referring to all the propaganda. They write as they affirm that genetically modified crops are safe to eat and have the potential to save millions of lives. Not just the potential, I mean, they just factually have. I'm pro-vaccine and pro-GMOs. I'm pro-human life. I'm anti-human suffering. And so I don't really like it when, a lot of people spread propaganda, spread lies. Anyway, here's a clip of Bill Maher just absolutely groveling at his feet.
First up, he is a lifelong champion of the environment who appears in the documentary Trace Amounts, available now online, and is the editor of Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak, a book on the same issue. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is back with us. Robert, it's been so long.
So this book that Robert Kennedy is on the show to promote is about thimerosal conspiracies and autism links to vaccines. Totally discredited bullshit. But this is actually the first segment after the intro. So Bill is giving him basically the most important segment on the show to spread his propaganda.
You have to look at the biggest vector of mercury in American children now is coming from vaccines, and we need you to look at the science. And when I started looking at it, what I saw was very alarming, which we were giving huge amounts of mercury to our children. A lot of it has been taken out of vaccines, but there's still an extraordinary amount still in the vaccines, and particularly the flu vaccine.
So it's kind of funny. Even the writers of this article can't find the rest of that bit. I think Bill Maher just sort of cut it. They can find the transcript. Bill goes on to say that you're doing really important work and you're getting the message out there, and it's a conversation that we need to have, and all this bullshit. Shouldn't be giving airtime to the guy. It actually gets worse. He had a whole episode on vaccination back in 2015. He spews so much propaganda with Marianne Williamson, known crystal lady, by his side. Total kook.
It reminded me of the Iraq War, the first weeks. Just don't ask any questions.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that bothered anybody else. And then I was wondering what you think we should do about this problem of parents who may not want to do it versus the public good.
Yeah, I mean, look at his face. Bill, the problem is when he has these anti-scientific ideas, he bullies people real bad. Like, he's just going to start bullying the crap out of people over this nonsense. It's bad.
Bothered me because the implication was that if you had any skepticism whatsoever, you were anti-science.
And a kook.
And exactly. And I think there's a difference between having skepticism about science and having skepticism about the pharmaceutical industry.
Classic anti-vaxxer argument, right?
No, I don't want the government, as a rule, telling me what I can do and what I can't do with my body for medical.
No. I've heard that argument lately. Where have I heard that argument lately?
We know that the government has suppressed information and withheld information. We know that the medical establishment has suppressed information and withheld information. So that at this point, even when they say something that we should listen to, people have a skepticism.
Is that the problem? Or is the problem people like Bill Maher here and Marianne Williamson spreading all this propaganda, making money off of it? I mean, this lady makes a lot of money off of books and all kinds of speaking fees. She's actually a multimillionaire. And she's saying that the problem is this pharmaceutical industry. These people who are working to create vaccines to save lives, you can't trust them. You can't trust the government either. By the way, I don't agree with that. I'm just doing an imitation of her stupidity.
Is not to tell us we're kooks, but for them to get their act together so that they are more trustworthy again.
Yeah, says every anti-vaccine bully in the aisle. Look how proud she is of herself. Just embarrassing. By the way, this is a classic Bill Maher setup where it's him and two other people that agree with him, plus the audience. And this poor guy is just going to get shouted down and treated like a child because he's just got like 0 people backing him up. Nobody has to believe him, right?
In point of fact, when it comes to public policy, states set vaccination policy.
So this was in light of Rand Paul and Chris Christie pushing back against mandatory vaccinations. And she's making an argument that, you can't call them kooks. It should be left to the states. This is not something that the federal government should even get involved with, which, basically everybody's realizing that that's not going to work. Let's let it go.
And we know that the science is very clear on this. Vaccines do not cause autism.
Right.
Bill's like, right, I agree with you. I mean, I had Robert Kennedy on, and he had his whole segment to push a book that said the exact opposite, but I didn't challenge him. Actually, I said he's spreading important information.
I do think you really need to look at possibly eliminating or at least narrowing these exemptions. I mean,
Can I make one more point about the media that bothered me this week? The analogy that I see all the time is that if you ask any questions, you are the same thing as a global warming denier. I think this is a very bad analogy because I don't think all science is alike. I think climate science is rather straightforward because you're dealing with the Earth. It's a rock.
It's such a dumb argument that you can like hear the coughing in the audience. You're going to get your information about what science is real and what isn't from a guy like this? Come on.
The medical industry. I mean, they've had to retract a million things because the human body is infinitely more mysterious. People get cancer and doctors just don't know why. And they put mercury in my teeth. I remember my father had ulcers and they treated it wrong when I was a kid. Thalidomide, I mean...
What can you say? It's just anti-vax propaganda. Thalidomide. He even mentioned that bullshit from Robert Kennedy's book.
so that there are no serious professors who are vaccine skeptics out there that I've seen.
Can you name
And there
more
are
than
no-
this one MIT guy?
Poor guys trying to explain to him that the science is completely on the side of vaccines. They're not going to listen to that. They're just going to talk down to him. I mean...
Can you name
And
more
there
than
are
this
no-
one MIT guy?
He basically challenged him and said, you can't name a single qualified scientist that agrees with your vaccine position. And Marianne's glib response was, can you even name more than one scientist? I mean, that's just, look at her smiling. She's just the worst.
Can you name
And
more
there are
than
no-
this one MIT guy?
Can you do too much of a good thing? Because America loves to do that. We certainly went overboard with antibiotics.
Can you have too much? Is it too much? Is it like antibacterial resistance? I mean, they're being bullies right now. Anytime this poor guy tries to stand up for science, they're going to take a shit on him. Check it out.
But in 1983, they gave a third of what they give now.
Well, long before this story became such a big issue, many parents have been very concerned about this vaccine issue. And so, and I know my daughter was born 24 years ago. So conversation has been around for a long time.
Anyway, she's just spreading all kinds of nonsense here. This is even more. It's so hard to watch.
About this issue of vaccinations. And it's a matter of degree. It's a matter of the fact that all of a sudden we're taking all of them together in one shot. That's why people are talking about staggering them. You know, it is an upside of the American mind that we don't buy everything we're told necessarily. So I think there's a skepticism which is actually healthy on this issue of vaccination.
You know, there have been no long-term studies about groups of people who get a lot of vaccinations versus groups of people who don't.
Oh my God. This is the same silly argument that the anti-GMO guys make. You know, there haven't been long-term studies, and then there are long-term studies. Well, they're not long enough. And it's like 50 years later, like, okay, well, it's still not long enough. That's not how science works, okay? That's not how safety evaluation works. You have to demonstrate some sort of mechanism of harm. You can't just speculate on some sort of, oh my God.
I'm not so sure that people who get a lot of them have as robust an immune system. Let's say we're not really looking at the bigger picture of this. When your body doesn't get a workout.
So you want your build up your natural immunity. Don't get the vaccines. They'll reduce your ability to fight the thing. I mean, just hard to watch.
And yes, I think we should have skepticism.
Now Bill's about to jump into some anti-GMO propaganda. We already talked about how the consensus on GMO safety is firmer than for human-induced climate change. So it absolutely is a fringe anti-scientific belief to be spreading all these fears about GMOs. I mean, they've already saved millions of lives between golden rice and everything else. Like, if you think vaccines save lives, which they do, I mean, I'm vaccinated, I actually agree with vaccines. If you think that's important, genetically modified foods is so much more important than that in terms of lives saved. Watch Bill, Marianne, and the rest of these guys just go full force. Oh, it's just so embarrassing.
GMOs. I remember 5 years ago, if you said, I don't eat GMOs, you were a nut. Well, there's a lot of nuts now.
Yeah, because of people like you spreading propaganda. I love how that's like his confirmation. He's like, well, I know a lot of other people who believe propaganda too.
I have
One word, Monsanto.
That's basically all the argument Bill needs. One word, Monsanto. Imagine all these scientists, tens of thousands of people throughout the world working so hard to create these critical products to save lives. And then Bill and Marianne and the rest of these guys just completely dismiss their work, just wrap them around a bow. Oh, it's Monsanto. Throw it in the garbage. And again, they're going to bully the crap out of this poor guy from the Weekly Standard who tries to stick up for the, scientifically valid position that has more consensus than climate change. But let's go ahead and see it.
GMOs are pretty clear. It's a great force for reducing world hunger. I think that GMOs have been a huge breakthrough for the whole world.
But when it comes to-
but I'm not a
comes to
starving child in Africa.
Well, I have a
Okay,
couple-
yes, if I was starving, I would eat a GMO food. But that's not the case here.
What studies show that GMOs are harmful, though?
Okay.
I don't know whose reaction was the worst. Marianne's, the lady on the left, or Bill's. So it's hard to see them all at the same time, so let's watch them real quick. Marianne at Holds is like, oh, my sweet summer child. This lady on the left actually is at a loss for words. She basically just mouths like, wow, or like, she just can't believe she's sitting next to the smartest person she's ever met. Nah, she thinks the guy's a dumbass, even though it's the three of them in the audience that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about and is just bullying this poor guy. Check it out. Watch it one more time.
That GMOs are harmful, though. What?
Okay.
She's biting her lip. Marianne's just doing a face palm. Oh my God. This is like the hardest watch. Just exactly what this Bill Maher show is all about. Poor guy who's trying to tell them, hey, vaccines and like GMOs and all these other things, stop being part of the lies. Stop being part of this movement of Robert Kennedy and Andrew Wakefield and anti-GMO, anti-vaccine nutters. Come join the Nobel scientists and the rest of us that are trying to prevent this crime against humanity of misinformation and preventing genetically modified foods from being adopted by consumers and larger society. Trying to pay, oh, they're just for starving kids in Africa. It's like borderline racist statement. It's an inferior good, and I'm not a starving kid from Africa, so I don't consume inferior goods. Like, gross. There's going to be someone rational out there, maybe not in the TV audience, maybe not on the stage with him, but out there in the world who sees how embarrassing this behavior is, all this anti-GMO, anti-vaccine, anti-science, I'm just asking questions. Can't trust the pharmaceutical companies. You can't trust Monsanto. You can't trust all these Nobel scientists. You can't trust the thousands of people who work every day to make this work. They're all part of the conspiracy too. Just preaching to the choir and then celebrating when they cheer something that doesn't really make any sense. Again, they're just doing a real disservice to the science. Actually, Adam Schiff and Elizabeth Warren are asking Amazon to curtail COVID and misinformation, which is kind of ironic because both of them are against GMOs too. Both Elizabeth Warren and Adam Schiff have tried to push these anti-scientific labeling laws and stuff. So you're actually forcing misinformation. You're legally mandating that people put it onto their products. The AAS, as I said, that those labels can only serve to falsely mislead and alarm consumers. It's not about choice anymore. It is than choice about vaccines and whether you can put all kinds of propaganda about that. Imagine if it was legally mandated. This vaccine is a GMO. So, they absolutely have merged. It's the same people. It's the same propaganda. Bill shouldn't be pushing it. Adam Schiff shouldn't be pushing it. Elizabeth Warren shouldn't be pushing it. Even though she's trying to curtail certain types of it. She's missing the forest for the trees here. She's only looking at individual trees. Anyway, just watch out for this format of propaganda where it's a bunch of people cheering on and beating up on somebody. There's no scientists on the panel. The poor guy, he's just repeating the scientific opinion. Nobody has to agree with him, just like you don't have to agree with me. Maybe you're listening to this and being like, oh, Cyrus is making all this shit up. I don't know. Look it up for yourself. Go see what the scientists are saying. But this opposition to genetically modified foods has no more scientific basis than the opposition to vaccines in terms of lives lost and suffering created. Both of them, both movements are doing a lot to harm people. Bill Maher and the rest of these people, who can't even acknowledge the other side of the issue without just like throwing their hands up and being like, this guy's so fucking stupid, I can't believe it. He's never heard that GMOs are bad for you. It's like, just embarrassing.